The night before graduation, my father looked at my 12-year-old brother and said, "Your sister doesn't deserve to be valedictorian. She cheated her way through school." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Mom stared at her plate. The table went silent. 4 years of perfect grades, sleepless nights, and dreams I had felt dirty in his mouth. Then Liam stood up, pulled a recorder from his pocket, and said, "Actually, Dad, it's time they heard what you did." My father went pale. I thought Liam was about to defend me. I had no idea he was about to expose why my future had vanished. That morning, my graduation gown hung from the back of my bedroom door, still wrapped in thin plastic that crackled whenever the air conditioner kicked on. My cap rested beside 3 versions of my valedictorian speech, a half-packed suitcase, and the acceptance letter I had read so many times the folds had gone soft. In the mirror, a family photo showed Dad with one hand on my shoulder, 4 of us smiling beneath a 4th of July banner. I used to study that picture whenever we fought, searching for proof that the warmth I remembered had been real. I buttoned a pale blue blouse and smoothed my chestnut hair over one shoulder. People called me composed. They never saw me lace my fingers together until my knuckles hurt, rereading every email, convinced one overlooked sentence could ruin everything. I was 18, first in my class, and headed to a respected university on the East Coast with a financial aid package large enough to make leaving possible. At least. That was what I kept telling myself. Lately, everything had felt fragile. A complaint had forced the school to review one of my exams. Financial papers had been delayed. A college visit had been canceled after Dad said the family business had an emergency. Every time something went wrong, he stepped in, made a call, and told me not to worry. "You're too close to this," he would say. "Let me handle the adults." My father, Daniel Bennett, owned a mid-sized family business and wore control like a pressed white shirt, in public. He bragged about me, at home. He reminded me that none of my success had happened without his money, his standards, or his sacrifices. Mom was in the kitchen frosting a store-bought cake when I came downstairs, the sweet vanilla smell mixed with burnt coffee. "Don't bring up leaving tonight," she whispered. "Your father's under pressure." Karen Bennett loved me. I knew that. But her love was careful, quiet, always shaped around whatever mood Dad brought home. Then there was Liam. My 12-year-old brother sat near the patio door with his glasses sliding down his nose, testing the small recorder he used for a bird call project. "Battery good?" I asked. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the hallway. I tapped the recorder. "Maybe you'll finally interview that famous cardinal." "Usually." He would have smiled. This time, he didn't. He looked like he wanted to tell me something. Then Dad walked in. Liam closed his hand around the recorder and went silent. At dinner, Dad said, "Everyone stays at the table tonight. I found a solution for Emily's future." The word solution made my stomach tighten, because whenever my father solved a problem, someone else usually lost a choice. Dinner smelled like rosemary, butter, and the steak Dad had cooked too long because he kept checking his phone. The overhead light cast a yellow circle across the table. Mom had left the graduation cake in its plastic box on the counter, unopened, the blue icing visible through the lid. Dad sat at the head of the table, cutting his steak into even pieces. "So," he said, without looking at me, "did the college call?" "They emailed. The financial aid office is still waiting on the missing paperwork." His knife paused. "I told you I was handling that." "I know, but I want to call them myself tomorrow." Dad looked up then. His expression stayed calm, which somehow made my pulse jump harder. "You don't understand how these things work, Emily. I understand that the deadline is close." Mom's fork clicked against her plate. "Maybe tonight isn't the time." Dad wiped his mouth, reached beside his chair, and placed a folder on the table. I found a better option. I opened it. Inside was a work agreement for the family business. The salary was decent. The start date was 2 weeks after graduation. The section about college described a 1-year delay, though no one had ever asked whether I wanted one. "You prepared this already?" I asked. "I prepared for reality. I'm not signing tonight." Dad leaned back. After everything I've paid for. You can't give your family 1 year. It isn't 1 year if I lose my place. You may have already lost it. The room seemed to shrink. What does that mean? There are questions about your record, the cheating complaint, concerns about whether you can handle pressure. Schools don't ignore those things. My fingers locked beneath the table. I pictured the administrator's office, the tissue box near the window, the way I had answered the same questions until my voice sounded guilty even to me. Who raised those concerns, I asked. Dad sliced another piece of steak. People notice patterns. I earned my grades. That isn't the point. It is exactly the point. His eyes hardened. You think leaving makes you independent? Your mother and brother depend on this business. If you walk away now, they carry the weight, Mom whispered. Daniel. He ignored her. We supported every late night, every activity, every application. You owe this family some loyalty. For one awful second. I wondered if staying was the responsible thing to do. Dad saw the hesitation. Then he turned toward Liam, as if I were no longer worth addressing. Your sister doesn't deserve to be valedictorian. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. She cheated her way through school. The table went silent. The refrigerator hummed behind us, suddenly loud enough to fill every unanswered question. Mom crushed her napkin in one hand. Liam pushed back his chair and stood. He pulled the recorder from his pocket. Actually, Dad, it's time they heard what you did. Dad's face changed. Sit down. Liam. Liam pressed play. Dad's voice came through the recorder with birdsong and wind. I don't need anyone to prove she cheated, he said. I just need enough doubt around her name. A second man answered. Daniel. That could follow her. She'll recover. What she won't recover from is losing the financial package. Delay it long enough, and she'll stay. My lungs forgot how to work. The recording continued. Dad spoke about telling people I was unstable under pressure, about holding back financial information, about making sure the college believed I might not be ready to live away from home. Then he said the sentence that split something open inside me. Once she thinks every outside option is gone, she'll sign. Liam stopped the recorder for a second. Nobody moved. Then Dad shoved back his chair. That was a private conversation. He reached toward Liam. Mom stood so fast her glass tipped over. Water ran across the table and soaked the edge of the work agreement. Don't touch him, she said. I had never heard that tone from her before. Dad stared at her. You have no idea what this is. I have more than the recording. She walked to the kitchen counter, opened a drawer, and brought back a stack of papers, bills, payments, printed messages, dates circled in blue ink. I found these after Liam sent me the audio, she said. You contacted Thomas every time something went wrong with Emily's applications. Dad laughed, but there was no humor in it. You went through my office. You lied to us. I looked at the dates. One matched the canceled college visit. Another matched the complaint about my exam. Another came 3 days before the financial aid office said information was missing. The room tilted. All those nights I had blamed myself. All those apologies. All the times Dad had put a hand on my shoulder and told me he would fix it. He had been setting the fire. Then standing beside me with a bucket. How could I not see this? I whispered. Dad turned toward me. Because there was nothing to see. I was protecting you from a decision you were too young to understand. You called me a cheater, to wake you up. You tried to trap me. I tried to keep this family together. His voice sharpened. If you leave, your mother and Liam will pay for it. The business needs you. This house depends on me. My hand moved toward the pen beside the agreement. Maybe I could stop the fighting. Maybe 1 year would not destroy me. Liam's voice cut through the room. I don't need her to ruin her life for me. I looked at him. He was crying silently, but he did not sit down. Mom pushed the papers toward Dad. Emily leaving did not break this family, she said. Your lies did. I set the pen down. No social media, I said. No public spectacle. We take this to the school, the counselor, and the college. Dad's face went still. Mom reached for her phone. And for the first time. He looked afraid. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Dad's voice coming through Liam's recorder, calm and certain, like he had been discussing inventory instead of dismantling my future. At sunrise, I stood in the bathroom and pulled my graduation gown over my dress. The fabric whispered against the tile. My hands shook so badly I had to pin my hair twice. Mom appeared in the doorway. "Your father left last night," she said. I looked past her toward the bedroom. Half his side of the closet was empty. For 1 second, I felt 12 years old again, convinced every disaster in the house had somehow started with me. Then Liam stepped into the hall wearing a navy suit that was too wide in the shoulders. Did I ruin everything he asked? I crouched in front of him. "You did not create what Dad did, but I pressed play. You stopped us from pretending." At school, Principal Parker and Ms. Adams met us before the ceremony. The office smelled like coffee and printer paper. Principal Parker folded her hands. "We reviewed your academic record again. There is no evidence you cheated. Your valedictorian status stands." My knees almost gave out. Ms. Adams added, "The college will not change its decision because of an unverified accusation. They are reviewing the communications separately, so I can still go." "Yes," she said. "You earned that place." I had imagined hearing those words for months, instead of feeling triumphant. I wanted to cry over how close I had come to surrendering. The hallways were crowded with families, flowers, and camera flashes. A few students glanced at me, then whispered. News had traveled, though nobody knew the whole story. I nearly turned toward the restroom. Then I saw Liam near the auditorium doors. He pushed his glasses up and raised one thumb. I kept walking. Each step felt like choosing myself before everyone who had doubted me. Mom and Liam sat together in the family section. The seat beside them remained empty. When my name was announced, I crossed the stage and unfolded my speech. My original draft had been about hard work and opportunity. Safe words, polished words, words that asked nothing from anyone. I looked at my classmates. "People will tell you that support always feels like kindness," I began. "Sometimes it does. Sometimes it looks like rides to school, late-night coffee, or someone cheering from the front row." I paused. "But control can borrow the language of love. It can tell you that gratitude means obedience, that family loyalty requires you to surrender the future you worked for." The room grew quiet. You can appreciate what someone gave you without giving them ownership of who you become. I looked at Liam. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is one person refusing to stay seated while someone else's story is being rewritten. That was when I saw Dad. He stood in the shadows near the back wall. Our eyes met. I finished without looking away. "Your future is not family property. Your life is not a debt." The applause rose before I stepped away from the microphone. Outside, Dad waited near a concrete pillar. "You humiliated me," he said. "I never said your name. People will know. You are angry because you cannot control what they think." His jaw tightened. "I paid for everything. You paid bills. You did not buy me." I handed him the unsigned agreement. "You do not contact my school. You do not touch my paperwork. You do not use Mom or Liam to pressure me. And if I refuse, then we do not have a relationship." For the first time, the anger left his face. What replaced it was fear. "You will fail without this family." "Maybe," I said, "but the failure will be mine." Then I turned around and walked back toward Mom and Liam. This time, Dad was the one left standing alone. The weeks after graduation moved more quietly than I expected. There were no flashing cameras, no dramatic courtroom scene, no instant punishment that made everything feel simple. Real consequences arrived in emails, meetings, and long pauses at the kitchen table. The school completed its review first. There was no evidence I had cheated. My grades, attendance, test history, and teacher evaluations all supported the same conclusion: I had earned valedictorian. The anonymous complaint had come from information that could not be verified. Principal Parker told me the matter would be closed in my academic record, while the adults involved in passing along those claims would be questioned separately. The college kept my admission and financial aid in place. When I read that message, I sat on the edge of my bed and pressed both hands over my mouth. I did not scream, I just breathed. For the first time in months, the future felt like something solid beneath my feet. Dad was removed from every conversation connected to my education. I changed my passwords, redirected my mail, and took control of every form and account with my name on it. Thomas had to explain why he had repeated concerns he never verified. I never learned every consequence he faced, and I stopped needing to know. Justice did not have to become public humiliation to be real. Mom moved into a small apartment across town. She did not ask me to forgive her right away. One evening, she sat with me at the kitchen counter, turning her wedding ring slowly around her finger. I kept calling it peace, she said, but it was fear. I looked at the faint groove the ring had left in her skin. I love you, I told her, but I need time before I can trust that you will choose us when it is difficult. Her eyes filled, but she nodded. That is fair. Dad sent messages every few days. Some sounded angry. Others acted as if nothing had happened. I answered once. My boundaries had not changed. No contact with my school. No pressure through Mom or Liam. No relationship without honesty and counseling. After that, I stopped arguing. His real consequence was not losing his business or his home. It was losing the role he had written for all of us. Mom no longer protected his version of events. Liam no longer went silent when Dad entered a room. And I was not becoming the daughter who stayed because guilt felt safer than freedom. Near the end of summer, Liam and I sat in the backyard while cicadas buzzed in the trees. I still think I broke the family, he said. I reached over and nudged his shoulder. You did not break it. You showed us where it was already cracked, the night before I left for college. He handed me a small box. Inside was a new recorder. A note was folded underneath it. For the stories you choose to tell. I hugged him until he complained he could not breathe. Will you come back? He asked. For you and Mom? I said. Always. I placed the recorder inside my suitcase, beside the family photo from my mirror. Then I closed the lid. For once, I was not packing to escape my family. I was leaving to become myself, on my own terms. Looking back, the hardest part was not learning that my father had lied. It was realizing how long I had measured my worth by his approval, for years. I thought being a good daughter meant staying useful, grateful, and small enough to fit inside the future he had chosen for me. I was wrong. Love is not ownership. Support is not control. Gratitude does not require surrender. The truth did not repair my family overnight. It cracked the picture we had all protected. But once that picture broke, we stopped pretending the damage was not there. I still do not know whether Dad will change. Maybe he will take responsibility. Maybe he will keep calling control love. That choice belongs to him. Mine was to keep moving. Liam pressed play because he refused to let someone else rewrite my story. When I reached college, I pressed record for a different reason. I wanted to remember my voice without fear behind it. Have you ever had to protect your future from someone who claimed they were protecting you? Share your story below. And subscribe today so you never miss another powerful family betrayal story that deserves to be heard.